Hey, Starlink Realty, Ernesto here. Today we're going to talk about the release and cancellation of contract. There it is right there. How do you use it? How do you fill it out? What does it do? And a few other tips right now. And welcome back, Starlink Realty, Ernesto here. So what do we have here today? We have the release and cancellation. So what is it for? The release and cancellation is for whenever you're under contract and you have to cancel that contract. It doesn't close for a million reasons. It doesn't close. You're gonna have to release and cancel both parties of the contract, as well as the buyer's agency, the seller's agency, the buyer's agent, the seller's agent, right? So everybody has to be released and the transaction canceled. This is what that document is for. I've got my copy right here. You guys got your copy on the screen. So like I just mentioned, you need it whenever the transaction fails to close. You have to cancel the transaction. Now, how do you do it? It's actually quite easy to fill out the contract, but there's a couple of nuances, as you always hear me say, that today we're gonna go over. So how do you fill it out? You've got the buyer there at the very first line. It says, by signing this release and cancellation of contract, the buyer's name, if there's multiple buyers, if there's multiple sellers, are canceling the following contract. So check one. Here it asks you, this is really simple stuff. It asks you, what type of contract are you under? Are you under an as is? Is it a residential contract for sale and purchase? Is it a commercial, vacant land, etc., etc.? Checkbox that one. With the effective date of blank. So whenever that effective date is, that's what you're gonna put on there, okay? The effective date on the actual contract. Scrolling down just a little bit, it's going to say, it wants you to enter the street address and the legal description of the property. Usually the street address will do just fine. Will release from liability, buyer and seller release each other, as well as name of brokerage right here, and together with its affiliates and its respective officers, directors, agents, employees, successors, assigns, and the other brokerage, the other agency, together with its affiliates and their respective officers, directors, agents, blah, blah, blah. You guys can see that. So it's pretty simple there. Now we're going to get down here to where the disbursement of funds are going to go. This is a one-pager, real easy. By the way, we're looking at the RC-4 revised in March of 2019. What happens under the disbursement of escrow? There's a few things we need to talk about here, okay? You already know escrow happens when the property goes first under contract within 3 days of the effective date. When the contract gets signed, the buyer will send a escrow check to the title agent. Title agent will hold on to that escrow until it closes. If it doesn't close, this document will determine what will actually happen to that escrow. So let's say we have $1,000 in escrow, okay, $1,000 in escrow, and because of the dynamics of the contract, now there's multiple variables in the contract that will determine who's going to be more so entitled to that $1,000 escrow. It can be split if the parties are if they're not agreeing to the contract, it can be split. Generally, the contract will specify it more belongs to the seller or it more belongs to the buyer. Not always the case, but most of the time. Let's assume that we have something called an escrow dispute, okay, which is not fun in real estate. In fact, these aren't fun anyways, because this means that you went under contract and you're not gonna close. So it's already kind of a bummer, but we have to go through the process, okay? So we've got a seller and a buyer that are disagreeing on that $1,000, $5,000, $20,000 escrow of how it's going to be dispersed back to them. You can negotiate that process. You can say, well, the buyer is entitled to this because of that. The seller is entitled to this because their property was off the market for a long time. There's an enormous amount of arguing that can happen throughout the process, but at the end of the day, remember this, the title agency cannot release escrow to anyone without all the signatures in place. Basically, the same folks who signed the agreement are gonna need to sign the disbursement of escrow funds. If there's one signature missing, the title agent is not allowed to release escrow. Okay, so keep that in mind. Unless all signatures are in place, unless 100% of the parties involved are in agreement with what's gonna happen with that escrow, it will not be released from the title agency and it will become a legal matter. So if there's an escrow dispute that goes beyond our ability at our level in real estate to negotiate that escrow, then it turns into a legal item and it leaves our playing field, if you will, okay? From then on, the attorneys take care of it, usually at a cost to both the buyer and the seller, and then we watch what happens. The title agency eventually will receive a court order to do whatever the court decides to do with that escrow, and the title agent will oblige, send the money to whoever. All right, so that's how that part works. One more item I want to share with you about this one. This is pretty short, but we're almost there. Is if you're the seller's agent and your seller receives escrow, right? Let's say you're the seller's agent. It's your listing, and you brought the property. You got it listed. You put it on the MLS. You added the photos. You marketed. You went under contract, and then for whatever reason, the buyer side flakes out and fails to close, and the seller then receives an amount of escrow. You have the ability to retain a portion of that via the listing agreement. If you see my listing agreement video, we're going to talk about that. So the important thing to know here is that whenever there's a release and cancellation and you're on the listing side, there is a chance for you to earn some income. All right, so keep that in mind. Make sure all the signatures are in place. Turn this into the title agent. Once it's completed, title agent will release escrow and you're off to the next deal. All right, pretty easy on this one. Keep in mind, chess, not checkers. And this is how we do this. All right, I'll talk to you guys later. See you on the next video.